Hello and welcome to episode 88 of the Thinking LSAT podcast in Los Angeles. I'm Nathan Fox. With me in Washington, D.C., Ben Olson. Ben, how's it going?
It's going good.
Any exciting news from the other side of the country?
No, but I did hear, I was watching an ad for an app this morning, and I just decided I was done with app ads that use that use xylophone music.
Xylophone music, specifically. Wow.
Wait, well, do you know what I'm talking about? Like, every time you find some little video promoting some little app, it's like really jolly music, and everybody's excited to be doing their job so easily now, and they can send messages to somebody else, and they're all smiling, and they get the job done so quickly, and it's always the same music. It's like a xylophone in the background, and it's really cheery, but every app uses the same music, and it's annoying.
You saw that ad online, or?
Yeah, it was just like, it was for like a task manager or something, you know? You click on it, it's like, see how it works, and you click it.
Oh, I see.
It's all the same sort of music that they use on these like Kickstarter things too. You know, they start showing you the watch, and it's like ding, 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 and everybody's really happy. And it's just, I don't know, it's enough. We need some like, I don't know, just no music at all would be better.
All right.
Now I want to make an ad that's like negative. You know, like sign up for this class, this LSAT class. It's really dreary. It's really awful. Anyways, so. That's what's going on here. Yeah.
Marketers, just stop with the xylophone music on the ads. You're pissing Ben off. That's awesome. My ass is super sore. Actually, my entire body is super sore because I yesterday was hanging out with a friend, and we decided that it would be a good idea to buy a volleyball and go down onto the beach on Venice Beach and start just like dorking around with the volleyball.
Yeah.
So we played beach, just dorking it back and forth with each other, you know, trying to see if we could get like 20 in a row. And we finally did, but I woke up this morning and was like racked with pain from just some very casual beach volleyball. So that gives you a sense of my current level of fitness, I guess.
Yeah. That's funny. I just had something similar. I was just doing something different with my workout, and I was like, geez Louise, like this is basic stuff, and 2 days later I'm still suffering. So I guess we'll make it through this episode, huh?
I think I'll be all right. I have my cup of coffee, and yeah, I'm not like in that type of pain, but it is amazing how just like a little tweak, doing something a little bit different. But yeah, we were like diving around in the sand and stuff. It was kind of fun.
That's cool. Do you have your butter?
My butter. Oh, in
you
the
put
coffee?
Butter in coffee.
No. I don't. I'm a black coffee guy, but butter is a totally acceptable substitute for cream. If you want cream in your coffee and you don't have any handy, you can use butter for that same purpose. And I know people think I'm a freak for that, but it works.
Well, yeah, I was going to give you the feedback I've gotten. People come up to me and tell me, they're like, oh, I just heard the episode where Nathan puts butter in his coffee, and I tried it out, and I don't like it. So you're encouraging people to try new things. That's good.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't expect most people to, be able to understand it. It's I have a sophisticated palate, Ben.
That's what I've always thought, man.
That's 100% not true, by the way. I was at a bar the other day, and it was some fancy place that I'd never been to before, and my friend looks at the menu and goes, "Oh, Prisoner." It's some red blend, I guess, and Prisoner. I've never even been to a place that has that by the glass, and I was like, "All right, fuck it, I'll get that." And it's like the most expensive single glass of wine I think that I've ever bought, which is not like ultra expensive because I'm not an idiot, but it was $25, which is like way more than I want to pay for a glass of wine. But I was like, this is some special thing. I'll give it a shot one time. I'll try it and see what I think.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, there's no way I could tell the difference between that and like 2 buck chuck. I am officially a cheap wine drinker, and I'm proud of it. So I think that was the last time I'm ever going to spend money on wine. For now on, I'm just getting the cheapest one, and that's all there is to it.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Today on the show, we are not going to talk about soreness and wine and xylophone music for the entire time. We are going to talk about the LSAT and law school admissions. We have a whole bunch of emails still here, Ben, just a big backlog. And we also are going to probably have time to do at least one question of logical reasoning from June 2007.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good to me too. I've been looking forward to it. You want to talk about this BART ad that you saw?
Yeah, so I was in California visiting family, and I got onto BART to go to the airport, and I just noticed that there was an ad. I walked by it pretty quickly, but it was basically recruiting people to become attorneys. So that was a little bit surprising to me. It's like basically, hey, become an attorney and help fight for environmental justice. And I didn't read it too carefully, but it definitely had this sense of like, now is the time to step up and defend the environment that is under attack, essentially because of Trump. And so I was like, hey, people are responding to Trump in some way and deciding to go to law. Law is becoming cool again for a few days,
Yeah. What was this an ad for? Was this from a law school? Or I'm trying to figure out who's paying.
I know
for this
it was
ad.
from it seemed like an organization. I want to say something like, kind of had like an NGO sort of feel, and they were just encouraging people to go to law school, and maybe they would even help fund it a little bit. I wasn't totally sure.
That just seems. Of course, I'm gonna shit on this whole idea, right?
Please go right ahead. Yeah.
I don't know. It just seems so far fetched.
Yeah. No, actually, now that you say that, that's kind of that is the thought I had when I was like walking. And again, I was just walking by it in like 15 seconds. But I was thinking, what? So you're gonna go to law school and then you're gonna end up fighting for environmental justice? What are the chances of ending up there? I mean, what? What's going to happen between now and 4 years from now when you finally get done with this?
Yeah, Trump is hopefully not even going to be president anymore by the time you get out. So what? You're going to start now with studying for the LSAT. Then you're going to do your whole application cycle. Then you're going to go 3 years of law school, study for the bar, pass the bar, and now instantly you're going to be the type of lawyer that actually has an impact on global national politics. Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's like, I have a brain tumor, so I'm going to start studying so I can become a brain surgeon.
Yeah, it's bizarre because, no, I mean, that's another good point. What are you going to do when you first come out of law school? Are they hoping to recruit you and then get you up to speed on...
Like immediately the government is just like calling you, like, we need you. You're the best. We need you on the team right now. We got to fight these problems. Wow.
Well, the weird thing here too is that those ads cost money, so this organization is somehow thinking that this was a good use of funds this week and this month and now.
We need somebody in the Bay Area. If you see that ad, please let us know. I'm actually going. I'll be in the Bay Area this weekend teaching my class in San Francisco, and so I'll be on BART a little bit, and I'll look for it. I want to see because we got to get to the bottom of this. Any Bay Area listeners, please, if you see this ad, tell us who it is that's wasting money on this advertisement on BART.
I wonder now if the more rational interpretation is they're just trying to get attorneys to work for them, who people who are already attorneys. That would make more sense.
That does make a lot more sense. Yeah, if they are actually recruiting for real jobs, but then.
But I'm serious. It really felt like, at least when I passed by, that it was like, it was like attorneys, this is the thing now. This is good. So become an attorney. That's what I felt like. But we got to get it figured out. I actually tried to Google it after I got home because I was like, what did that ad actually say? But I couldn't find it. So
interesting. All right. Well, hopefully we'll have an update on the next show if we can get to the bottom of this. And yeah, Bay Area listeners, if you see that ad and you want to snap a picture of it or something and send it to us, we'll crowdsource this and get it figured out.
So I was getting on at the Walnut Creek BART station. That's where I saw it.
Okay. So East Bay.
East Bay, yeah.
East Bay listeners, we need somebody to go to the Walnut Creek BART station, find that ad, to be totally grandiose and think that we're actually capable of talking our audience into doing something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Should we dive into these emails?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, good. This one is from, can we say her name? It wasn't on there, but I just looked at the email and she didn't say not to say. So that means we say, right?
I think so. Yeah, that's the rule.
That's the
Everybody
policy.
knows by now.
Yeah. So this is from Cordelia. It says, "Hi, Nathan and Ben. I found your podcast helpful and fun when studying for the LSAT last spring, and I enjoyed introducing and cheating the LSAT also." Oh, those are two of my books, which are all available on Amazon.
Wait, did you just add that in there?
No, she literally said, "And I enjoyed introducing and cheating the LSAT also."
No, I'm just kidding. That's good. Yeah, there's good books.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the great material. But there was a question I didn't find an answer to. What does the improvement curve look like for most people who study for the LSAT? As in, what's the optimal amount of time and material to go through, and when do you hit the point of diminishing or no returns? Of course, it will vary some, but I'd bet there's a neat curve with a peak somewhere. The basic question of when to start preparing comes up a lot, and I'd love to see a data-driven answer in case you are already compiling some data on that for your own purposes and future students, or would like to enlist other podcast listeners for a self-reported study. I've included my records. And then she goes into all of her practice test dates and scores.
Yeah, she has a lot more faith in us, I think, than is warranted.
Yeah, well, I was hoping that because you're like the data-driven guy, so I was hoping that you would have some sort of a data-driven answer. But my answer would always just be, it really depends for everybody. You should start prepping as soon as you can because it takes everybody a different amount of time. And even if we did come up with a curve, right, it would just be an average curve, which doesn't really do a lot when you're an individual who's trying to make their own decision. So I think we are going to agree here, probably start as soon as you have time in your schedule, and then how long it's going to take. I would just sort of speculate 3 months.
Yeah, that's my sense. It feels like people can put in a good amount of effort for 2 to 3 months, see decent progress. I think it's reasonable to expect 10 to 12 points in that time frame. Can people do more? Certainly. But as we always say, plan on taking the LSAT twice. So you shoot for the next test in the next 2 to 3 months. You see how far you can get. Maybe you take it, and then maybe you decide you can eke out, another 5 points or something. Yeah, there will be diminishing returns. You're not going to go up as much each time, but that also depends on where you're at.
Yeah.
So I think it's tough, but I think it's reasonable to say that it's going to probably take the vast majority of people between 2 and 6 months, and it's not unreasonable to expect 10 to 15 points in that time frame.
If you don't improve by 10 points from your diagnostic, that usually means that you just didn't do the work. If you weren't prepping kind of on an everyday basis, you didn't do any reading, you didn't do enough practice tests, then, you're not going to improve. But if you do work diligently at it, like we're always talking about an hour a day for 2 or 3 months, you should probably improve by 10 points or more. And yeah, eventually in month 2 or 3, your improvement's going to level off, right?
Yeah.
Scores are going to kind of be bouncing around a new higher level. You'll still have, of course, plus or minus, 3 or 4 or 5 points from test to test, but the average of those practice tests will be like 10 points higher or more from where you started.
Yeah. And granted, if you're starting higher, then that's going to be a little more challenging, right? Obviously, if you're in the mid 160s, it's easier to break 170 than someone else, but at the same time, it's harder to go up 10 points. I think if you're lower, if you're in the 140s, it might be easier to pick up more points. But then at some point, right, if you get too low, it's like maybe going up is going to be a challenge because you're struggling with even more basic stuff.
Yeah.
And going to have trouble getting your mind wrapped around the core concepts that you need to do to get into the upper 150s and so on.
Yeah. So Cordelia then gives her whole dates and practice test scores and official score. She started on March 5th with a 160, and she ended up on the actual June 6th of last year LSAT with a 170. So exactly 10 points difference between her first diagnostic and her actual score. Her practice test scores leading up to the June 6th test in the last month or so were bouncing between 166 and 173, and she ended up with that official 170. Yeah. Awesome. That's 3 months, 10 points improvement. That's like exactly what we would expect. How did she do it? She says she took one full-time test each weekend and did one section timed almost every weekday. She used a total of 31 past exams. So that's 14 full tests and 16 that she says dismembered, which I like. She dismembered those and did them as timed sections. And then she read 2 of my books. And she's going to Penn.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's great.
Okay. So success story. Yeah. Awesome. Anything we want to add to that?
10 points is a good goal to shoot for. I just clarify, as I think we often have, that there's a lot of variation too. So if you only go up 6, that might just be because you were on the lower end of your range, right, on test day, and not to panic too much about it. That's why you want to plan on taking it twice.
Or 3 times. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Thanks, Cordelia, for listening. Good luck at Penn this fall. Next one. Dear Ben and Nathan, my name is Chris, and first off, let me say how much of a fan of the show I am. You guys helped guide me every step of the way from my first diagnostic at 150 to my eventual 171 I got on the December test.
Wow.
And I cannot thank y'all enough for that. I'll try to keep this as brief as possible. I just had a couple questions. A lot of y'alls in here. Nice. Where is this guy from, Chris? Somewhere south, I'm guessing. First off, I wanted to know if y'all had any tips for improving from a 171 to a approximately 180.
Whoa.
Now, I know what y'all want to say here. Quote, don't do it. You're already in the 98th percentile. It's not worth your time. However, I just started working an LSAT tutoring job for Kaplan. I took it in September and got a 162, and December was a 171. So I have one more try to take it. I'm literally getting paid to study for the test right now, and I'm taking a gap year. So the only opportunity cost to taking this again is the $175 it costs. And I can get over that. So there seems no reason not to try to improve. I have all of Kaplan's resources for free, as well as tutoring others really helps me grasp concepts better because I cannot teach them if I don't have a good handle on them myself. Should I continue to take 45-minute what? That's got to just be a typo.
Yeah.
35-minute sections, he means. Should I continue to take 35-minute sections as you recommend? My worry is I'm almost out of prep tests. I have done literally every prep test so far, except maybe 1 or 2.
Okay, so I think the most valuable thing for Chris is to do what we always say, but that is to continue to take sections, even from tests that he's taken before. Maybe start with the ones that he hasn't seen in a long time, and then force himself to basically get 100% correct. If maybe that's after the timer's up, but before he grades it, figure out every question that he had any doubt about on his own before he knows what the right answer is.
Yeah. There's a lot here. There's a lot we can kind of unpack here from this first question. I like that plan. Sure, do 35-minute sections. I do also want to say, I don't understand why he's doing this. I guess, sure. I mean, I guess a 175 is better than a 171.
See, we don't have his GPA, do we?
No, we don't have GPA.
Maybe we do down below.
Oh, we do later. Uh-oh.
3.09.
Yeesh.
But improving.
Yeah. Says he thinks he can get it up to a 3.2. So that's cool. All right. Yeah, I mean, okay, so fine. Let's just say it's worth it. He enjoys LSAT studying. He's also now working for Kaplan. I think that some of the Kaplan techniques and stuff that he's going to have to be teaching his students is going to hurt him. I don't think, a lot of that stuff they're going to teach you in Kaplan is going to really be useful.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's teaching is going to be definitely useful.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that most of his teaching is probably going to just be on explaining why things are right or wrong and how he thinks about it. So he can probably ignore their techniques in a lot of ways.
Yeah, just use the test questions.
Yeah.
Right. So even when you take a crappy LSAT prep class, they do give you lots of real tests. So I would just tell him, like, yeah, ignore all of the lessons that he's going to, all the lessons, just ignore all that. And instead just do the questions themselves, the real LSAT questions.
Yeah.
And when you're teaching your students, just don't worry about the dumb Kaplan explanations, and you should use, like common sense, good explanations.
It's funny. Google has like documented or put online all these books, right? Sometimes you search for terms and it'll show you it's in some book that they've digitized or whatever, and you can't see the whole book. Have you ever done this?
No.
Oh, okay. So if you search for some phrase and it happens to be in a book, Google has digitized a lot of these books, and so it's searchable, and it will take you to that page of that book. Okay. And it won't, obviously for copyright reasons, and whoever owns that book wants to sell it to you as opposed to just giving it to you through Google. Google won't show you the whole book, but they'll show you some of those pages. But the point of this discussion is that I was searching for an explanation on a particular question, and I was curious. I think someone was asking for a book that would have good explanations, and I came across Princeton Review's explanations, and I actually found them to be very concise, but also accurate and good. And I didn't know if, such a big company, you don't know if the person who wrote those explanations is writing the other explanations. So that's what I told the person. I was like, hey, these actually look pretty good. But I also came across Kaplan's explanations, and it was very, it's consistent with with what we've thought about Kaplan. But I was just, it's sort of mortifying to actually see it in print and be like, wow, it really is as bad as I like to joke around that it is. They had their little catchphrases and they were bolded. So it definitely felt like some sort of like game almost. I'm reading through these explanations. Like A is wrong because it's, quote, out of scope, and out of scope is bold and slightly bigger text. It's if you just recognize that it's out of scope, then you're good, And some of these things were wrong. Like I was like, well, it actually is relevant. It's just, and it does slightly strengthen the conclusion. It just doesn't strengthen it nearly as much as this other answer, which is correct, because it uses many instead of most. And yet here they are just like, it's out of scope. I'm like, who sat down and wrote this? This is insane. But they're so obsessed with their little like catchphrases. And they had some other ones, it was like, I don't know, extreme, and extreme was bolded and bigger.
Wow.
As if just knowing like, oh, that answer is extreme. Now I know why it's wrong. As opposed to like focusing on the actual word that makes it wrong, or the phrase or the idea,
Yeah, and understanding what you're looking for and understanding what would be right, and then, okay, this is specifically wrong because of this. Out of scope is a funny one because in my experience, when people say out of scope, it's a really good sign that they don't know what they're talking about. Yeah. Like they just, it's, why is this one wrong? And they're like, out of scope. And I'm like, it's just, no, it's like, oh, okay, you mean, but what do you mean? What is out of scope? What are you talking about?
Yeah. And even if
what type of question is this? And why is it wrong to be out of, out of scope would only be, that, I guess, if we're talking about a must be true question.
Yeah, I could see an answer choice being irrelevant and you saying it's out of scope, but usually they've written these things so that they still seem somewhat on topic, and so you have to explain, at the very least say, well, it's out of scope because it doesn't touch on, this idea in the conclusion.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so inadequate. And it was I wasn't mortified, but I was like, geez, it really is true. This is just awful.
Yeah. Kaplan is hilarious, man. I we've talked about this before, but I walked into a testing center in Boston looking for SAT work. This was 15 years ago. And they said, oh, we have too many SAT teachers, but if you take a practice LSAT, maybe we could give you LSAT work.
Yeah.
And so they put me in a room. I did a practice LSAT. I think I timed it myself. And they hired me on the spot to start teaching LSAT. They put me through a pretty shitty, like 1 week training program, and bang, I was like their new LSAT teacher.
Yeah.
I never taught a classroom class for them, but they did have me do some one-on-one tutoring, which I'm sure they were billing out at, hundreds of dollars, and I was getting paid whatever, $20 an hour probably.
Yeah.
And that's the type of shit you're going to get with Kaplan. Now, we're not, Chris seems like a very thoughtful guy, and because he's listening to the podcast, we know he's a genius. But they don't even, he got a 171. That's way over the hiring requirements for a Kaplan LSAT teacher. Yeah. And even, look at what Chris is doing. He's going to teach a little while for Kaplan. He's got no training. He's got no really particular expertise. He's just a smart guy who, was able to work his way up to a 171. That's awesome. And, probably can get higher, but he's going to be teaching LSAT classes for Kaplan where people are paying thousands and thousands of dollars to take the class from him.
Yeah.
And his goal is to make a little bit of cash, because it sounds to me like he's going to law school.
Yeah.
So he'll be there. It's just a bummer. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. The only saving grace for Kaplan is if you happen to get a teacher who's been doing it for a long time, happens to like working there, and thus continues to work there, even though they probably could do something else. Yeah. And
you can catch
the advice strictly.
You can catch somebody who happens to be great at teaching, happens to enjoy it and happens to be great at it. I think I was pretty damn good when I was a PowerScore teacher, but it was nothing to do with PowerScore, because they barely trained me and they just threw me right into that classroom. And it turns out I was born to teach the LSAT, and I made a whole career of it. But, and so, I think my students who had me there, I think they kind of got lucky because they got an actual teacher. But there've got to be a zillion other people who are like, oh no, I'm just a smart person who's on my way to a lawyering career. And I'm going to read to you out of this book for a while you're in this LSAT class, and I can probably, I understand, I can find the right answers. So that's, qualifies me to be your teacher now. But boy, that's going to be rough because you've seen it, right? You have your students do some explaining to each other in class.
Yeah.
And you'll have high scoring students, right? You'll have a student who's already scoring 170, and they understand the question.
Yep.
They got it right. But then if I just kind of listen in, and there's times where the smartest one in the class will be the worst at explaining. I can tell they understand it, but they just have no ability to convey that understanding to anyone else. So it's just because you got a high scorer in front of you doesn't mean that you've got a teacher in front of you.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I think Chris will benefit a lot from the teaching, right? Just from doing dozens and dozens of explanations. His score is going to be going up, I would think, even if he doesn't do really any prep.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. What would y'all recommend doing with my gap year? I finished college a year early, and now I have a BA in econ in a small town, as well as working for Kaplan, very part-time, and a small movie theater. Cool, also part-time. Should I try to intern at a law firm for the experience, or try to get a real job with econ, which can help finance my law school education?
If you can get a, quote, real job, I would. The only reason to go to a law firm would be to make sure you know what you're getting into.
Yeah, a crappy internship at a law firm is not going to be good money, and it's also not going to be really good experience, other than the peek behind the curtain, just to see whether this is what you really want to do. So yeah, you're thinking, hey, you've got an economics degree, maybe you can get an actual business job.
Yeah, and plus I think that's better for your resume. I think that coming in, it doesn't matter what you do. You could be a chef. If you're an awesome chef, or at least somewhat going up in the ranks and learning how to be a good culinary arts person, that's something to talk about. Internships at a law firm, just because it's a law firm, does not help you at all.
Yeah, it's you and everyone else who has this crappy internship. It does not differentiate you at all. It's not really legal experience. So yeah, I would go for the money / I would go for whatever it is that you're really into.
Mm-hmm.
Because best case, he gets a job that pays him well, and he really loves it, and then he just doesn't go to law school at all.
Best.
That would be the very best case. So,
And then write us and tell us.
Please tell us if we talk to you out of law school. Please let us know, because it's like the greatest thing that ever happens to me anyway. When someone says, "Oh, I took your advice and decided not to go to law school," I'm like, yes, nice.
No, that's good.
So yeah, make some money, save some money. Boy, really consider not paying for law school. I mean, we'd have to talk to Chris about his plans for what he's going to do with his JD and that kind of thing. But we've said it a million times. Basically, if you're not going to go into big law, you should not be taking on like big law kind of debt, right? So if he's paying out of pocket, which he might be because of his low grades. Although, I don't know, with a 175 and a 3.2 GPA, he should be able to get some pretty significant money at a lower ranked school.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like he wants to do, or he's considering T14 like everyone else, but just based on his lower questions here. But yeah, like, okay, great. You get into a T14 maybe with those numbers, but can you get into a top 20, top 30 school and get a full ride? I don't think that's unreasonable at all. With those numbers? No.
He says, assuming with a 171, assuming I don't score higher, is the T14 a pipe dream for me? I know my GPA 3.09 is low, but I really plan to show law schools I've changed by getting a 3.7 last semester, and then hopefully around that this semester. Oh, so he had a 3.7 last semester, and he's hoping for a higher than that this semester to show I have what it takes. I'm hoping to use my last year in college as well as relevant work experience to show I can succeed in law school. Do you think I have a shot at the T14? You know, we don't answer these questions anymore because you need to go on the, like, just very many law school predictors that are out there, right? Google LSAT GPA calculator, and that's going to give you a very good idea of what schools you're likely to get into. I mean, I guess his specific question here is, hey, because it's improving. But, you know, we've said this a million times. They're only looking at that if they already like your numbers as they are, right?
Yep.
I mean, your GPA is what your GPA is, and that law school predictor that you're going to find, Google LSAT GPA calculator, put your numbers in, and it's going to tell you what your chances are roughly. And we can't tell you how much the improving trend is likely to really help you. Mm-hmm. And then, the next question, follow up, if I can improve to maybe a 175, will that help me much? Well, yeah, I mean, again, you can play with those numbers in the LSAT GPA calculator.
Yep.
I know you will probably suggest going to a lower ranked school where I can get a scholarship, but if someone like Duke accepted me, I'd pay sticker price in a heartbeat. Okay, fine. That's a decision you can make. Yeah, if you have good reasons for doing that, then sure, that would make sense. But if you just like want the prestige of, oh, I'm a Duke kind of a guy, that's a bad reason to pay full price to go to Duke. If you're doing that because you know that Duke is going to get you a big law job where you're going to be able to pay back the crazy Duke tuition, then that's fine. But if you're just doing it because you like the sound of Duke on your resume, that's really not a smart decision. Lastly, I wanted to say thanks again for doing the podcast. I would be nowhere near as successful if I did not happen to stumble upon you guys. The Thinking LSAT podcast is going to be the first thing I have written down on the board when I start my first class this Sunday. That's awesome. So great. So Chris is in the Kaplan classroom promoting the Thinking LSAT podcast, where we relentlessly just shit on Kaplan over and over. That's awesome. Cool. Thanks, Chris. Enjoy your teaching. I hope you love it as much as I do. It's like the most satisfying career. It's awesome. So maybe Chris will become a full-time teacher, fall in love with it.
Yeah.
Excellent. You want to take the reins on this next one?
Sure. So, hi, Ben and Nate, former strategy prep student here. I have been a DC resident since 2007 with roots in the Philly suburbs. With Ben's help on the LSAT and great undergrad GPA, I'm facing an enviable decision. I'm currently looking at 4 full ride offers: American Catholic Temple in Villanova, as well as some money from GW, $16K a year. I've also been accepted at Penn, which I had never anticipated happening. LSAT was 163, which is decent but not amazing. I'm waiting on decisions from Mason and Georgetown, but I'm torn between the stark contrast of free tuition versus probable full price, and the full ride offers want answers by early or mid-April. Yeah, so American Catholic Temple and Villanova are all in the like 80s to 100s, something like that.
Okay.
And it's full ride. GW is like 24. Penn is what, 7?
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, what do you think so far?
I think congratulations. That's awesome. My default recommendation is do not pay for law school unless you have very good reasons to pay.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard anything here. I guess there's more later on about what she wants to do. She.
Yeah.
So maybe we should get into some of that.
Sure. So background. I graduated from American with my bachelor's in 2011, poli-sci 3.92. And I have been working in the legal consulting world, focusing on the Department of Veteran Affairs since 2012. I will be attending law school full-time. My parents will not be assisting me. But I won't probably be able to get financial aid because I'm still, I guess, associated with them in some way. So Penn and Georgetown require... Oh, I see. Because Penn and Georgetown require parental information regardless of independent tax status.
Yeah,
okay,
but that's not going to stop you from borrowing. You're not getting need-based help anyway. That's not what happens in law school, right? I mean, I guess you get better like lending terms. They're going to loan you all the money in the world. So I don't think any of that really matters.
Okay. Yeah, it's just whether or not you get like subsidized.
Yeah, you can
loans
get
or something.
because if they'll make her like get those plus loans.
Yeah.
Which are like just much higher interest rates, but whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I've worked hard since 2011, moonlighting in addition to my 9-to-5 job to pay off undergrad loans and build my savings. Due to my risk aversion, I always saw myself as attending law school as at little or to no tuition cost. Great. I also always envisioned myself staying in D.C. And apart from Penn, which was a reach application, I applied to the Philly area schools as more of a safety net in case I received no scholarship offers from D.C. and needed to move home for school. Long term, I have no particular interest in big law or that huge starting salary, and I want to work as a lawyer for the federal government in admin or regulatory law. And that's another reason I want to stay in D.C. and minimize the cost. Minimizing the cost was always the plan. Okay. Now that I'm accepted to Penn, however, I'm having a tough time making this decision. Am I throwing away the opportunity of a lifetime, or will a continued hustle at a second or third tier school still make me competitive for a job? On the full tuition offers, do you think being in DC with access to the DC network and building the one that I have outweighs the higher ranking of the Philly schools? Okay. So just a quick rundown. Penn is ranked 7th. Oh, she says this here. She's got no aid. GW is 25, $16,000 a year. Temple is 50, full scholarship, easy renewal. Villanova, 74, same thing. AU, 78, Catholic, 103. All seems like pretty easy ways to renew those scholarships. Yeah, I don't know. Penn is a good school. Ranked 7. Seems like it would open opportunities that the other schools would not in a time when law jobs are not very accessible. But at the same time, full tuition is really hard to turn down. I'm torn.
The bird in the hand, you know? If she wants to stay in DC anyway, she already has a network in DC.
Yeah, so in DC, she's still waiting on Georgetown and Mason, and both of those schools are pretty good. I'm surprised Mason's 45. It used to be in the 30s, but those are pretty good schools. Hopefully she can follow up with them and get some word back from them on what they want to do, if they want to give her money. They probably don't, though, if they haven't gotten back to her. Where is Temple? That must be in the Philly area, right?
Yeah, I think that's in Philadelphia.
I have a negative impression of Catholics. So if I were to stay in DC, the problem with GW is 16,000 a year is just not very much. I think the tuition is like, I don't know what it is, but it's high.
Okay.
So that's not going to help very much. I'd be debating between AU and Penn. I wouldn't worry about the $16,000 at GW. I don't think it's worth the benefit, but Penn is high enough up there that I think it would open opportunities that you wouldn't have with other schools. So I would consider it.
Yeah, wait to hear from Georgetown and Mason. Renegotiate all these offers if you can. I like the American offer as well. Were we talking about it recently that a ton of people end up transferring from American to like GW? Or even to Georgetown, right? Wasn't Georgetown taking a ton of transfers at one point?
Yeah, I feel like that's right.
I could be making that up.
No, let's just stick with it, though. It's good. It's encouraging. No, I think you're right. That's the other thing to keep in mind. What was her GPA again? Oh, she had a really good GPA. Yeah. She had 3.92, which means she's going to do well, probably, wherever she goes. Which also means I think she could do well at Penn. I mean, I'd be worried about going to Penn if you don't feel like you can cut it in that academic environment. But she did well at American, so I don't see why she can't necessarily do well at Penn.
Yeah. The fact that she says, though, that she does not want to work in big law, I guess the question is, exactly what kind of government lawyer do you want to be? And, does she know those government lawyers? And what do they say? Like, how did they get their job? Who is the lawyer whose career you're trying to replicate? What is it that you want to do with your life? Do you know those people? If not, you need to meet those people and you need to talk to them and you need to figure out a reasonable plan for how to get there. If they say to you like, oh, you're not getting my job via American University, then you need to maybe not go to American University even though it's free. If that's your dream job and you just can't get it without going to Penn, then I would say go to Penn. But if you talk to them and they're like, oh yeah, no, these local schools are great. Yeah, sure, you can totally go into these kinds of government jobs via American. Then it's a complete no-brainer to just go to American for $0 with a really easy scholarship renewal. And it's where you want to stay. You can minimize costs, right? It sounds like she's already got a place to stay, place to live in DC. Because Penn, she's going to not only be paying full tuition, but she's also going to be paying living expenses, it sounds like.
Yeah, those are really good questions. Because maybe these government jobs are competitive enough. I mean, there's a whole range of different types of government jobs, right? And some are much more competitive than others. And maybe they only look at schools that are in the top 30 anyway. Or maybe they don't care at all, like you're saying. If they don't care at all, then AU makes a lot of sense. But if they do care, then going to Penn and being not only in the top 30, but in the top 10 could make it a lot easier to get into some of those positions, even if you end up having debt. And I imagine, I don't know for sure, but I would wonder if government jobs have some sort of like loan forgiveness too over time, depending on the agency and so forth. But the reason I'm still like kind of open to and leaning toward Penn is that I just wonder how much MJ knows exactly what she wants to do. I mean, she says she does, and she clearly seems to have some idea of what she wants to get into, and she's been working in the federal government, so those are all good things. She knows more than most people do. At the same time, sometimes I feel like people get into law school and you take different classes and you say, you know what, this is actually what I'm interested in doing. I think a lot can happen in 3 years, and I think leaving Penn, you can look around the country and go to a lot of different places. And you can't do that with these much more local schools, right? Georgetown, yeah, maybe. GW, maybe, but not these other schools.
Yeah, it's just the double-edged sword, though. Yeah, Penn opens all these doors, but then also now you have $250,000 worth of debt. Mm-hmm. And so it opens doors to, like, that you might not want to walk through. It might open doors that you're going to be forced to walk through, right? And next thing you know, she's, oh, well, I have all this debt, so I better take this big law firm job. And she ends up working on the exact opposite team. Mm-hmm. You know, she's like wanting to, it sounds like she's wanting to save the world here, being like a government regulatory lawyer. I'm just imagining her wanting to like protect the environment or something.
Yeah.
And then she walks out of Penn with $300,000 worth of debt, and she's like, I have to pay this back somehow. And next thing you know, she's working for Exxon on the exact opposite side of the case she wanted to work on.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is just not why people go to law school. You know, that's not what they're planning. Sometimes people just go to law school and turn into complete dicks. And so that's what I would be worried about with all that debt.
Yeah, no, that's true. Although also at Penn, you actually have the opportunity, if she does well, to look at clerkships and things like that.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah, this is one that we're never going to be able to solve, and we've been talking about it since the beginning of the podcast, right? I mean, with my students, I've been teaching LSAT for 10 years now, and with my students, it's always been like I have students every year who have to make the decision between, okay, do I go to Berkeley and pay full price, or do I go to, University of San Francisco on a full ride?
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. It really depends. That is not a cut and dried thing. If you don't see yourself making crazy six figures right out of law school, then I don't see how taking six figures worth of debt makes any sense.
Yeah. Hey, what do you think about this idea? It might be too late, but what if she took the LSAT in June, knocked up her score a few points, that gave her another argument to Penn to say,
Yeah.
Hey, we'll give you some money.
Well, she could also wait another year. I mean, these are good offers, right? But because 163, she's calling that decent but not amazing. I mean, she was your student. Can she score higher than 163?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, she works hard, so
yeah.
I think she can do well.
Then, retake the LSAT in June and potentially, if necessary, wait another cycle. But yeah, if she goes from 163 to 166 or something, 167, that's only a few points. But now George Washington might find a full ride scholarship for her.
Yeah. I'm trying to think where she was scoring before, and I think she was actually scoring higher than that for sure.
Oh, yeah. Well, then,
if not a lot higher. So if that's the case, then a retake makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
Sorry, MJ, you have to remind me, but I think you were doing a lot higher than that. So, that's something else to consider.
Yeah. All right. Any more on that?
No, that's it. So this next one, we got an update from a listener who wanted to keep his name redacted, but
okay.
He scored, basically, he took the test 3 times, averaging a 163 as well. Also a similar GPA, 3.8. And he writes, I thought you might be interested in how admissions was going for me. I applied to too many reach schools thinking my story would count for more than it did, so I have received a number of rejection letters. I don't think that matters at all. I don't think you applied to too many. Like, a rejection letter is the exact same as complete silence because you didn't apply.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it cost you a little bit of money, cost you a little bit of time, but so what? That's like how you do anything, Like, you want to be a writer? You want to be a television writer? Okay, good. Like, start stacking up the rejection letters. So that's what you're gonna have to do. You're gonna have to write something on spec and send it out and get it rejected by 100 people. You get 100 no's, and then that's on the way to getting a yes. So that's fine applying to a bunch of reach schools. I mean, you got to be somewhat realistic, I suppose. Unless you have some crazy story, your low 160s and your 3.8, it's just like not getting you into Stanford. Mm-hmm. You can look at Stanford's ranges and you can just see that they do not admit people that have that low of an LSAT score.
Yeah.
So it's fine. I mean, you could still apply, but there's a point where it becomes fantasy instead of like you have some sort of credible chance.
Yeah. So he goes on, however, I got a little over a half scholarship offer, $14,000 per year from Alabama last fall, and then after my grades for that semester came in, they raised it to 20 of the 23. So that's pretty good, 20 of 23. I I had requested a raise upon receiving the first offer of $14,000, explaining that it was my top pick, but I might have to turn it down solely on the issue of economy, to which they replied that a GPA increase would give them grounds to increase it.
Nice.
It did. So that's great. I then got an offer this month from Emory of $25,000 per year. Okay, that's a bigger number, but we don't know what Emory costs. And after I notified Alabama, they raised their offer to a full ride.
Nice. I like this. He's
good.
Playing the game here. Right?
Yeah. I wrote a beautiful negotiation email to Emory, but they didn't budge.
Okay.
Nice. Apparently, they don't have a scholarship committee like Alabama, but instead their dean of admissions handles all the negotiations. Huh. Okay. So I'll be attending Alabama in the fall, and I wanted to say thanks for all the guidance with the LSAT and admissions. I might have accepted the $14K per year if I hadn't heard your and Nathan's advice on various podcasts. Sweet.
That is awesome.
Yeah, that's money right there.
Yes, that
is. So we only expect half of that, right?
Yeah, right. We just get some cut, just a taste. Yeah, so what is that? So 23,000 it says. Yeah, so $9,000 a year, so $27,000 just for asking for it.
$27,000 plus whatever interest it would have taken to pay that off.
Yeah, right. Over however many years. So yeah, so we could be talking about $50,000.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Hey, everybody, listeners, scholarships are negotiable, and the admissions folks hate us. They have to hate us because they've got to be getting all these requests for negotiation. But there is no reason not to ask. The worst they can ever say is no. They probably will tell you no
and you're
at first.
Rejected.
Yeah, that doesn't happen. They don't ever say no and we're withdrawing our offer of admission. That doesn't ever happen.
Yeah.
I have heard of law schools saying, "Oh, we don't negotiate scholarships." But, all that is they're just telling you no. That's fine. But you have to make them tell you no. If they said we don't negotiate scholarships, I would still ask.
Oh, of course. That's just to make you feel good about their no, I think.
Yeah, and them saying we don't negotiate scholarships, that doesn't mean they don't negotiate scholarships. That could very well just be their first position that they take in the bar. That's like starting off with, okay, here's the rock bottom. This is the lowest I can possibly go.
Yeah.
Just because you say that doesn't mean that's true.
No, it's true. You come back to him, you say, hey, look, here's the reality. I understand you don't negotiate, but
let's negotiate.
I can't come to your school at this freaking price.
Yeah, and then they say, oh, well, yeah, we don't negotiate, but there is this other scholarship over here that we could consider you for. And it's like, okay, we're good. We're not negotiating now, but you did go find me more scholarship money.
We're just looking at what we might have missed, what we forgot about. Yeah. That's good.
It's all negotiations. It's all bullshit. And yeah, you should definitely ask for more money. And we love getting emails like this. This is awesome.
Yeah.
You could, you could give one more shot at Emory there if you really wanted to go to Emory.
Yeah. Because now you're not going, right?
Well, this dean of admissions who's handling all the negotiations, if you call this dean and say, hey, Emory really was my number one choice, but I've got this full ride at Alabama and I just can't. So respectfully, I am withdrawing my candidacy, my application. I'm withdrawing my application to Emory, but I just wanted to thank you, Dean of Admissions, for your time. That might be the end of it.
Yeah.
But I've had this happened at UCLA, by the way. I had this exact thing happen with a student of mine, that she withdrew her application to UCLA because she had a full ride from Irvine, and she was talking to the dean of admissions and, okay, thank you very much, goodbye. And then 15 minutes later, her phone rang, and it was that same dean of admissions who, we found a full scholarship for you. That was after after saying on the phone, I'm withdrawing my application.
I think the call there is kind of crucial. I think if you do it via email, it's a little It maybe seems more final, don't you think?
Could be, yeah. You could also, if you have a nice little conversation with them, if you sound really like adult and thoughtful as you do this whole thing.
Yeah, don't do it. Like you're haughty or something. Or what am I trying to say here? Arrogant.
Yeah.
I've decided to go somewhere else. You little.
Yeah. No, you want to be doing it in like a very humble kind of, thank you so much for the offer, and I really appreciate that you made this offer of $25,000 to me. And boy, it was a tough decision, but I just ultimately I have to, because of my family or whatever, some stupid reasons, I have to minimize my debt, and so I'm going to withdraw my application to Emory. But I wanted to thank you.
Yeah.
And that very likely could be the end of it, and that's it. But you'll have had a nice conversation. And that dean could hang up the phone, and they could just immediately be thinking like, damn, boy, I hate to lose that one.
Mm-hmm.
Give them the impression that you're going to be a great alum someday. And they get off the phone, and then who knows what they might be able to do for you potentially.
Mm-hmm.
So it's certainly no guarantee, but I have had people get money after we thought it was final. I've had people get more money. So... The negotiation never stops. Well, and then remember we had Anne talking about how people were still negotiating even after the semester started?
No way.
Yeah. This was a couple of years ago. Anne told a story in my class in San Francisco about somebody who started at school X, like went to a day of school at school X, and then school Y came in with a better offer.
Oh, interesting.
And actually like got on a plane or something, like, see you later, school X, and walked away from a semester of tuition. But the other school and the other offer was better, and just said, all right, I'm out. See ya. And went and did day one at, some other school. So if you are willing to keep playing the game and, to keep negotiating, I would think all of these offers can get better and better.
Yeah, these admission officers are going to be really frustrated now. They're like, they just don't stop asking.
Yeah. Well, that's negotiating, Yep. And our listeners are like at such a disadvantage when they're negotiating against these people, because these people are professional negotiators. Mm-hmm. That's all they do. Whoever this is at Emory, with this dean of admissions, we think, according to our one report here that we have from a listener, this dean of admissions is like negotiating with all however many hundred students every single year. So they're a pro, and I don't know. I feel pretty good about our role helping the common man here, giving them some advice.
Yeah.
And that's that. We don't have a name there. Redacted.
Yep.
Okay.
Mr. Negotiator.
Okay.
Closer.
Yeah. So that's it for the emails. We finally cleared out the backlog.
Yeah.
You want to dive into a logical reasoning question?
Sure.
This is the June 2007 LSAT, by the way, which is freely available through the Google machines. We are on section 3, and I believe we are on question 20.
Okay.
This is number 20. I would recommend downloading, if you're listening somewhere where you can, if you're at your desk or if you're somewhere where you can pause, it would be good to download this test and try to do number 20 on your own. Commit to an answer and then come back and listen to the explanation. You want to read the argument?
Yeah. It says, we should accept the proposal to demolish the old train station because the local historical society, which vehemently opposes this, is dominated by people who have no commitment to long-term economic well-being. Whoa, let's just stop right there, because that's one sentence, but it's got clearly a conclusion and a reason for that conclusion.
Did you say vehemently?
Yeah.
You want to try it
vehemently.
again?
Sorry, yeah, vehemently.
There we go. Yeah, okay, so this is, what do we have? We have a premise there and a conclusion in one sentence. And I know that because the word because is an indicator of here comes my reason. And it also indicates that the thing that was said before the because is probably the conclusion.
Yep.
I knew immediately that the conclusion was that first line, because of the we should accept the proposal. Anytime should is a pretty, not always, but it indicates the conclusion very frequently.
Mm-hmm.
So we should accept the proposal. Well, why? Why should we accept this proposal?
Yeah.
And then the because is a pretty bad reason. It says that the local historical society, which opposes demolishing the old train station, because they're dominated by people who have no commitment to long-term economic well-being. So that's a very stupid reason to demolish the old train station.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, hey, why should we demolish it? Well, because these guys oppose demolishing it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're jerks. So because they oppose demolishing it and they're jerks, therefore we should demolish it.
Yeah.
That's a dumb argument. That's no reason to demolish the old train station.
Yep.
You know, how much is it going to cost to demolish the old train station? How much environmental damage is it going to cause when we demolish the old train station? What are we going to put there in its place? What are you talking about? What I don't get it.
Yeah. Like even if their rationale for opposing the demolition of the old train station is bad, that doesn't mean, as you're saying, that there's not some other reason why we should oppose demolishing the old train station.
Yeah.
Just because someone makes a bad argument for something doesn't mean that there isn't another argument that is a good argument for doing that thing or not doing that thing.
Yeah, right. I mean, what about kids like old train stations?
Sure.
You know, and that has nothing to do with the historical society or whatever. That's just like, hey, my kid likes trains. My kid doesn't want to demolish the old train station. So, yeah, there could be a million other reasons not to demolish the old train station. What about tourism in our town? Because people come to visit our old train station from around the world, and now you're going to demolish it on the grounds that the local historical society is a bunch of jerks?
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense. So that already this is a terrible argument. Specifically, by the way, it doesn't say they're jerks. It says that it's dominated by people who have no commitment to long-term economic well-being.
Yeah.
Fine.
Which itself has problems, because even if you have no commitment to long-term economic well-being, the decisions you make may end up having
long-term economic
a positive,
long-term
economic
positive consequences. Yeah. Also, what about short-term economic well-being?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe short-term economic well-being is more important to me than long-term economic well-being.
Yep.
We're not going to live forever. We already talked about this, Ben. We're not going to live
together.
We're not going to live together. Definitely not. And we're not going to live forever. And maybe I don't have kids and I don't give a shit about what happens in the long term. Mm-hmm. Maybe I only care because that's totally fine. Like that's an acceptable position to take, is that, hey, short term is more important than long term.
Yep.
I mean, we don't know. Okay, so this argument has all sorts of problems.
Yeah. It goes on. Preserving old buildings creates an impediment to new development, which is critical to economic health. Okay.
It's on the same track.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit better of a premise because it's not so much of like a source argument.
Yeah, this is actually a factual claim that if we preserve old buildings, we're going to hinder economic growth, basically.
Yeah, it's an impediment to new development, and new development is critical to economic health. So it's a bad idea to preserve old buildings.
Yep.
Therefore, we should accept the proposal to demolish the train station.
Yeah. That's a lot better of a premise.
Because
it actually deals with facts directly. I mean, you could still say, who cares about economic health? And does that really matter? But it's better. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and another objection too would be like, hey, so what if, sure, preserving old buildings, that is an impediment to new development, but right next to the old train station, there might already be like 10 empty lots. Mm-hmm. You know, and if there's 10 empty lots right next to the old train station already, then I get it. New development is necessary, but there's plenty of room for new development. Even though there is an impediment to new development, which is this old train station, there could still be plenty of opportunity for new development. We just don't know.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. So then the question goes on to ask, the flawed reasoning exhibited by the argument above is most similar to that exhibited by which one of the following arguments? I would call this a parallel flaw question, in which case we are just looking for another argument that does the same thing.
Yeah.
And so I would expect it to basically have two premises and one conclusion. Those two premises and that one conclusion don't necessarily have to be in the same order that they were presented in this original argument. In the original argument, it was conclusion, premise based on what those people think or what they're committed to or not committed to, and then a premise about the actual buildings and what happens when you demolish them. Those can come in any order, but when we read these answer choices, I would expect to see some sort of premise that talks about doing the opposite of some group of people because they're lame, and then providing some factual premise that actually seems somewhat decent in supporting the conclusion that will probably say should, or some word that means should.
Yeah, I think that's important. The conclusion does need to have, because this argument has like a prescription in it. It has a recommendation. We have to do this. So I think the argument, or the correct answer that we pick here has to have that same thing in it. Telling somebody what to do.
So in my mind, I have sort of a generalized restatement of this argument. In other words, I'm moving away from the content, but I'm thinking to myself, okay, I expect something to fit this mold. We should do X because some other group opposes X and they're for some lame reason, right? And then some other premise reinforcing the idea that we should do X. That's what I would be looking for.
Which is also, and maybe that premise would be like, because not doing X has some bad consequence.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
Yeah, so again, it's two reasons why we should do X. One is, these jerks over here, they don't want to do it. And that's a really bad reason, right?
Yep.
And then the other reason is also, if we don't do X, we're going to get fat or something like that. Just like some bad shit. So there is some bad consequence of not doing X.
Yeah, and I'm just going to dig a little bit more into the details here. I wouldn't be surprised if in that second premise, or that more legitimate premise that we were talking about, they might have something that says, if you do X, you're going to have some negative consequence, like you said, which is necessary for something else, some other good thing.
Oh, sure.
Right?
Yeah, because that last premise, you could have said that last premise is actually 2, right?
Sure. And it's got that word critical in there, which is like necessary, and they like that sort of thing. So, yeah. Okay, cool. So let's go through these. So answer choice A says, our country should attempt to safeguard works of art that it deems to possess national cultural significance. Okay, so far so good. We should do this. These works might not be recognized as such by all taxpayers or even all critics. Okay, well, that's a little strange. It's like a concession. I don't think it's going to make this answer wrong necessarily, but we didn't see a concession in the original argument, right?
Yeah, and I go by feel a lot on these matching questions, right? Matching parallel reasoning and parallel flaw, or matching pattern of reasoning and matching flaw. Yeah. I definitely go by like a sense of feel, and our abstraction was we need a prescription and then we need 2 reasons why.
Yep.
And those 2 reasons were, one, because there's a group that doesn't want to do it and they're jerks, so therefore we should. And then the other one was an actual reason. And I'm just thinking, what is this middle premise here in A? That's not either one of those reasons.
Yeah, so I think that this answer is going to be wrong.
Yeah, me too.
But I guess what I'm thinking in my mind is that sometimes the correct answer will add additional fluff.
Yeah, sure.
That's not central to the reasoning, but ultimately the central premises or whatever were still included, and thus it is the best or most parallel argument. So I already have a chip on my shoulder, but just to put the nail in the coffin, I'm going to go a little bit further.
Yep.
And already I'm nervous because there's only one more sentence. And we need two premises.
Right. We're running out of room here. We need two premises, but we don't,
So far, we don't even have one.
Right.
We just have a concession.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Also, nevertheless, our country ought?
Should.
Yeah, well, should, but that, I mean, we only had the should in the original, in the conclusion.
Yeah, now we have two shoulds.
Yeah. Our country ought to expend whatever money is needed to procure all such works as they become available. There's nothing about another group.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's why they put in the taxpayers, but that was actually a concession. This is out.
Okay, good.
Cool. B, documents of importance to local heritage should be properly preserved and archived for the sake of future generations.
And now I would be looking, why? And I'm thinking, okay, in order to make this one right, it needs to say, well, because these guys don't want to do it and they're jerks.
Yep.
Furthermore, here's a reason why.
Yep.
Okay.
And we only have one sentence left.
Right.
So, and it's an if-then sentence, so this is already bad. But it says for, which is a premise indicator.
Because, yep.
If even one of these documents is damaged or lost, the integrity of the historical record as a whole will be damaged. We never talked about other people. This is gone.
Yeah.
Okay. C, you should have your haircut no more than once a month. Okay, thank you. That's our conclusion.
Yep.
After all, premise indicator. Beauticians suggest that their customers have their haircut twice a month. Okay, so that's another group is saying the opposite or saying something a little bit different. And they do this as a way of generating more business for themselves. Okay, that's kind of like they have no commitment to long-term economic well-being, right? Like they have this, their motives are a little bit off. They're jerks.
It's the best answer so far because...
It's the best answer so far, but it doesn't have the second premise.
Right, but I don't think it has to necessarily, okay? Because what we're doing here is we're looking to match, more than anything else, we need to match the flaw. And I think the big flaw of the given argument was we have to do this because these people want the opposite and they're jerks. That's why we have to do this. And that's a flaw. That's just a big flaw.
Sure. Yeah.
And C is matching that big flaw now. Right?
I agree. I agree.
So
it's not perfect though.
No.
And this is actually pretty common. Doesn't mean it's wrong, but it definitely means we should keep going just to make sure there isn't something that is more complete and maybe has that second.
I mean, A and B are not even close. And C is right now a contender.
A contender.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Cool. D, the committee should endorse the plan to postpone construction of the new expressway. Okay. So far so good.
And now that's be careful there, right? Because endorse the plan to postpone construction means don't construct, basically. I'm just saying if you read that too fast, you would think it said the committee should construct the new expressway.
Oh, okay. I do you think that this is a problem though in terms of the original conclusion?
No, I'm just noticing there that I feel like that could be easily misread.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I want to make sure everybody understands that endorse the plan to do what? Oh, to not construct the new expressway. Or
to put it off.
To wait, yeah.
Yep, okay. But we still get we should do something, X, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Many residents of the neighborhoods that would be affected are fervently opposed to that construction. Wait, hold on. So they are also in favor of postponing.
We would think, yeah. So they don't want to do it, so postponing seems like a good thing for them.
So that's a little weird because that's consistent with the conclusion. Okay, well, let's keep going. And the committee is obligated to avoid alienating those residents. Huh? Okay, so this kind of makes sense. This argument doesn't have the same problem as before.
No, that argument doesn't even seem flawed to me. I was looking for, hey, we should do X because these guys don't want X and they're jerks.
Yep.
C had that, and D does not have that.
Yep.
So it can't be D.
All right, last option E. One should not borrow even small amounts of money unless it is absolutely necessary. This is a little strange because it's like a conditional kind of prescription, right? So I feel like that's already a little different. But anyway, it should not do X, okay. Once one borrows a few dollars, the interest starts to accumulate. Beware of law school.
Yeah.
The longer one takes to repay, the more one ends up owning. This is, I mean, we don't even need to finish. We're not even talking about what other people think, their position, and how it's different from borrowing or not borrowing. This is crazy.
Yeah.
It's got to be C. It's not complete, but it's the most parallel by far.
Yeah. The question is asking you to match the flaw. The big flaw in the argument was because these guys are jerks, we should do the opposite of what they recommend.
Mm-hmm.
And C is the only one that has that. These beauticians, they're just doing it to try to make more money, so we should do the opposite.
Yep.
Well, wait a minute. There might be other reasons why we should have a haircut more than once a month.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the big flaw. I mean, this question, as it turns out, when you look back at the given argument, the final sentence of it was really, that's the fluff, actually. Or that's the part that's not actually related to the correct answer, right?
Well, yeah, but it helps fix the argument a little bit. And so if you're going to say that the argument is flawed, I mean, I agree with you. I guess I don't necessarily have a problem with it being in the correct answer.
No, my point is, when I look back at this given argument, when we read the argument, we were really objecting to that first reason they gave, which is, hey, the local historical society opposes it. Sure. And we were like, well, wait a minute, that's not a good reason to do it.
So what you're saying is that's essential to the correct answer, but the second part is not as essential.
Well, because the second part was not really part of that wasn't a flaw. The second part is not a flaw. It's a reason.
I mean, it's still flawed, right? It's just not as nearly as flawed.
I don't think I would call it a flaw. I think I would call it an incomplete argument. It says preserving old buildings creates an impediment to new development. New development is critical to economic health. So we should accept the proposal to demolish the old train station. That's not a complete argument. It's not perfect, but I wouldn't call it flawed either. I would just say, okay, you gave me a reason, so therefore we should do it. Like, I understand your argument, and I don't have like a bad taste in my mouth from that. I have a bad taste in my mouth from this whole thing about the local historical society. So if they're asking me to match that flaw, the flawed part is the thing that I really want to try to find. I really want to match that. I always explain it like this argument smells bad, and I want to find another argument in the answer choices. I want to find an argument that smells similarly bad.
Yeah.
And so that bad smell came from the other group, the local historical society. Mm-hmm. You know, they're jerks, so we got to do the opposite of what they say. And that's really the gist of it here. I mean, that's how we can comfortably pick C.
Yeah. I mean, I think we pretty much agree. The only thing I would just say is that I still feel like that incomplete argument is a flaw, because I could just see that as this argument is flawed in that it's presuming without providing justification that economic health is important, right, to deciding whether or not to accept the proposal. So in my mind, it's still flawed. It's just not nearly as severe of a flaw.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, and if there were another answer that had both of those premises in it, then we could pick that.
Yeah.
But here, it's just not there. So
yeah, for
pretty
sure.
comfortably pick C.
Cool. Well, that's good.
Yeah, awesome. We have a subscription page. We've mentioned this a time or two.
Yep.
It's at thinkinglsat.com/blog/subscribe. If you subscribe, you will get a notification as soon as the new episodes are hot off the presses. You can also follow us on Twitter, and you can get announcements. We tweet the shows immediately as soon as they're released. You tweet me at InFox, Ben at Strategy Prep, or the show at Thinking LSAT. Mm-hmm. You can learn more about our services on our websites. I'm foxlsat.com, and Ben is strategyprep.com. What else should we pimp for ourselves here? Oh, you can email us questions, help at thinkinglsat.com. That comes both to me and Ben, and one or the other of us will add your question to our agenda for a future episode. What else? Any last thoughts, Ben, before we wrap it up?
No, that's it. It's always fun to answer questions. So thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks very much for listening, and we will talk to you very soon.